Say we're learning about gardening. I don't have my suspenders, but um, thank you all for being here. Our third session of the End Times Preparedness series that we're doing to relaunch the Wednesday night services. We've got some goodies for you. Do we have some green thumbs here? Got some green thumbs. All right. Kind of. I brought my Sharpie. I'll get you later. It's a green Sharpie. Got some fun stuff for you. Got a presentation I've been working on for a little bit. And my name is Michael Thom. I'm Pastor Scott Thom's son, just if you didn't know or if you didn't remember from last time. And yeah, I've had a fun day. So let's pray and then we'll actually do something. So Father, we thank you for just blessing us, being so kind and good to us, for giving us a deep relationship with you. Just like a plant, Lord, that we can grow deeper roots into you, that we can gain such goodness, and that you desire to envelop us in your sweet presence, and you just rain down blessings on us. We're so thankful and grateful to you, Father, that we want to honor you and we want to engage with your creation so that we can bless our families, bless ourselves, bless our neighbors, bless friends, bless more family members, however you choose to do it, Lord. But may we be the blessing for you, and that you would continue to bless us as we honor you. So help us to learn today, and we thank you, Father, for just being amazing. In Jesus' name, amen. So we are going to talk about gardening. It is on a budget, but we're a church first, so we have to attend to your souls. And I am no exception to that, even though I am not Pastor Scott. So when you look at the Bible, you see the Lord interacting with his creation. And he's made it so he knows exactly how it works. And he has no problems disseminating that information to us. So you see that all throughout the Bible. There are loads and loads of agrarian symbology, references, examples. And so I'm going to bring up a couple of those tonight. Maybe more than a couple, okay? It's probably going to happen. But he uses them a lot, even in his parables. And this would have resonated so much with the Israelites and the people during that day, because they're like, oh yeah, that's my backyard. I do it all the time. Or the people that were farming larger sections, they go, oh yeah, we don't have time to just doop, 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 seed there, seed there, seed there. No, they're chucking seed. They need to get it out. They don't have time to wait because they have so many fields to get to. So when God's talking about these things, he's speaking on factual matters that he created. But of course, it goes into the spiritual because that's the more important thing. And so he touches on that. So if you have your Bibles, Matthew 13 is where we're going to be at, 1 through 9. Some of you might have guessed that. It is the parable of the sower. The first portion, he explains it later in the chapter. But the more I've done gardening, the more I've spent time in nature, and I've just been learning so much about how God works. And he becomes even greater in my mind, more special. I get a deeper love because I'm like, oh, that's what that means. So when he says that you need to prune, or that his father is the good gardener, and he comes and he prunes so that he can get more increase, I go, wait, that doesn't make sense. You're just cutting stuff off. You should get less. No. If you prune tomatoes, they produce like mad. If you have the vines. If you have bushes, kind of just leave them alone. But still, I got to see that. I've been growing some tomatoes for Kelly because I don't eat tomatoes that much. Every little sucker that pops out, pop, 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 pop. I get rid of those. And oh my goodness, I get the nicest little bunches of cherry tomatoes growing out there, and they're beautiful. And I can see that in his creation. So now that you're in Matthew 13, let's read in there. So it says, the same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the sea, and great multitudes were gathered together to him, so that he got into the boat and sat. And the whole multitude stood on the shore. Then he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some of the seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on the stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among the thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on the good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. So this is something else that came to be a lot more vibrant once I started gardening, because you have many different types of soils. And there was something that my dad said not too long ago, is that we can be any type of these soils. We can choose to be any type of these soils. But which one will you choose? So let's look at them. Let's take a peek. You have the soils that are by the wayside. These are like pathways, areas that are trodden down, that are compacted. There's no air, there's no water, there's no life. They're hardened. They're dead. And therefore, the bird can come in, Satan, as it's explained later, come in, there's that seed, gone. He just takes it, and it's his. And that person is none the wiser. They don't think of it because they're hard. Their heart is so hard towards the Lord. They have no desire for him. That's by choice. That's not by design, that's by choice. We don't have to be that way. So then you have the stony places. So, okay, there's still some hard stuff, but there's a little access to soil there. They can get down just a little bit, but not very much. And he says, what does he say about that? They get down and there's not enough room to set out roots. There's no water available, no nutrients, not enough at least, to do anything. And then sun comes out and just blasts them. They have no chance. And the world and the enemy just come in and they bombard them with persecution, and they're out. That's it. They can't go any further. Then you have the thorns and the weeds. So, okay, now we're getting a little bit closer, okay? There's more soil, there's some more water. Oh, man, the competition. Oh, that over there looks so good. What that thing the world is doing. I'm gonna go do that. And they get choked out. They can't keep up. So if you have weeds in your garden, they're gonna take over the nutrients. They grow so much faster than regular plants. They have a purpose, but right here, it's sin. The purpose is to show sin. But the other one, it says it fell on good ground. What makes it good ground? It was tended to. It was cared for. We each can tend to and care for our own souls so that we have good ground, that the Lord can sow his seed in us and it comes out. And I don't know if you notice, he's talking about 100-fold, 60-fold, and 30-fold. To give you some idea, nowadays, if you got a 10-fold produce out of whatever you sowed, you had a bumper crop year. This was a massive amount for today's standards, and we can produce a lot of food. He's talking about 30, 60, 100 times. That's a massive, he's like, I don't want small produce. I want all the produce. And I can do that in you if you keep yourself cultivated. It's our decision. We have to do well. Here's another imagery because we were talking about seeds. In John, and you don't have to bounce around here, but I'll read it to you. And I'm sorry, I didn't think about putting this up on here, but just listen. It's only a verse. So John 12:24 it says, "Most assuredly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain." So in context, Jesus is headed to Jerusalem, and he's going to be dying. It's his time. And he knows that if he lives, everyone stays unsaved because that's his work. His work is salvation. But if he dies, how much life comes from that death? Can we put a number on that? Can we evaluate it, enumerate it? No. How many billions of people have been on this earth? How precious was that gift? So I love this because he's using something that we understand. If I put a seed in the ground, it's dead. You've pulled it from its life source. It no longer has any way to receive life. And so you put it in the ground. But just like water baptism, it's a symbol. We go down, we die, we come up, we're risen again. The seed is the same thing. Every time you're planting a seed, you can remember salvation. It's very, very similar to baptism. Of course, we go through the baptism. The seed doesn't. You could soak them if you wanted to pull them out, and then they go through baptism, but it doesn't save them. They don't need saving. Just plant. Why are you guys going there? I don't understand that. So here's another one. Paul brings up the same thing. 1 Corinthians 15:36. Foolish ones. He's talking to the Corinthians. Remember, this is a carnal church. They're not thinking spiritually most of the time. They're thinking physically. So he's getting on them. Foolish one. What you sow is not made alive unless it dies. Okay, now he's talking about the same salvation, but now the new body. So now he's talking about when we die, we go away, we give up this body, which is frail, weak, and dying, and we gain an amazing, beautiful, awesome body that was represented by the Lord after his resurrection. So I brought this up. I want people to be aware that you can be the tender of your soul so that when God comes to put his seed in your life, I'm imagining most of you are Christians here, but some people online may not be, and some people here may not be. But if you want a relationship with Jesus Christ, all you have to do is make your heart soft to him. You tend that. And if you allow him to plant his seed in your heart, he can be a part of your life. So I'm basically teaching you, when you're out here gardening, when I teach you how to do the garden, you can be evangelizing. Because now you can have a ton of produce. You can take that produce to your neighbors and give that to them. And Kelly and I have found out, because I'm an introvert, I do not like talking to people. And you're like, I don't think I understand you. You don't make any sense right now. You're talking so much. You won't stop. This is what you're doing. This is what I want you to know. But I've been able to see so many opportunities to show God's love to people by making cookies. We have 9 chickens. We're giving out eggs because during the summers, they just produce so much each day that we can't keep up. We've been able to do that and to see people's faces, and that just opens up relationship. You can start relationships. You're not trying to buy someone. You're trying to earn a relationship with them so that you can lead them to Christ. But just like a seed, you have to die first before the Lord can do that work in you. Okay? All right. Spiritual has been taken care of. Time to plant a garden. So, Josh, please, sir. The question is, what type of garden? There's so many types of gardens. Do you see them all? We've got container gardens, raised bed gardens, keyhole gardens, straw bale, lasagna, in-ground. Yeah, it's fun. There's Back to Eden. Has anyone heard of Back to Eden? No? Oh my, okay. Permaculture food forest? Oh, this will be fun. So a container garden, you put all your food in a container, a pot, something that can hold dirt and water and grow your plants. That can be on a pedestal, so it can be up higher, like on a table. So if anyone has back issues, that's a good thing to use. And what I'm going to teach you, you can use for pretty much all of these types of systems, okay? But I'm going to give you ideas on how to use this first. Raised bed. So now, generally, that's going to be on the ground, but you have raised sides. Wooden boards is one way to do it. You have to remember with container gardens and raised beds that more air is able to get to those, so they do dry out faster. You do have to pay attention to them a little bit more. It's not impossible. In fact, my dad will tell you, you can get some amazing ever-producing zucchinis out of these things that just won't quit. But you do have to pay attention to them, okay? There's keyhole, and that's just, you can do that in the ground, and it looks like a keyhole. You make the garden all around it, and where you walk is a keyhole. And so that gives you the greatest access to the most space around you. So it's a space-saving thing. I don't have pictures of all these because I'm not really going to go too far into them. I'm just going to give you some examples, but I do have more pictures of everything coming up. Straw bale, literally, you get a straw bale, plop it on the ground. Uncle Jim, dig some of it out, right? Put compost in, put some manure in, water it, plant your stuff in it, and that helps grow it. That's going to decompose as your plants are growing. My favorite, in-ground bed, you give the plants full access to the ground, the earth that the Lord created, so they can pull up the nutrients. I'll get into that. It's actually not the plants that pull up the nutrients. It's bacteria, fungi, protozoa, microarthropods. Some scientist is going to get me because I forgot one, I'm sure. But I'll get into that a little bit. I won't go too much because I'm still learning about that myself. So back to Eden gardening is using wood chips on the surface as mulch to cover everything. We'll get into mulch later. But if you ever have heard of a guy named Paul Gauci in Washington, you should look him up. If you type in Back to Eden into YouTube, I have that in the back on resources. So the last page or last few pages, there's some resources there. I put that in there for you so you wouldn't forget. I love this guy. He's amazing. He does the Lord's work in such a fun way. Permaculture is a type of design where it teaches you how to look at all of your resources, all of your area, and plan out how you're going to set up your land to absorb the most amount of water, put in access ways that fit, that don't hinder that, and then where to put your structures. If you already have structures, you can work around it. That's something I just learned about, but I'm not going to go too far into that. So then there's square foot style. So you can set this out and then grid it, put a little grid every foot, and you make a little square, and a little square, and a little square. And there's guides online that tell you how many plants can fit in that square to use your space very wisely. So if you're interested in something like that, are you going to till stuff in, or are you not going to till stuff in? I would recommend not tilling things in. If you look at nature, and this is one of the things Paul Gauci says, if you look at nature, how does God take care of his planet? He layers it. In the fall, everything drops to the earth, and it sits there. He doesn't stir it up. He doesn't dig it up. He doesn't do any of that. It naturally just sits there. That's basically what I'm about to go into. Is it simple? I'm going to plant a few seeds here, watch it grow. Or is it going to be intensive? I'm going to plant a lot of things in some module trays, and as soon as this one's done, That comes out, this one goes in and starts growing. And I always have backups. That's a little more like intensive. Next one, please, Josh. So what I'm going to show you is how to create your garden in a no-dig, no-till, intensive in-ground system. But you can use the same system for containers, raised beds, keyholes. Straw bale will work. Oh, I didn't talk about lasagna, did I? You guys are wondering about that. So lasagna is basically creating a compost pile that your plants are going to grow in, but nothing's been composted quite yet. So you're going to lay your cardboard, you're going to lay your greens, such as green waste, such as grass and veggies and scraps and things like that. And then you're going to put some straw out, and then and you just keep layering greens and browns until you get to the top. And then you put some compost and maybe some manures. And I'm probably not doing that full justice, but that's the general idea. And that's why they call it lasagna, because you got all these nice layers. So first thing is site selection. Next one, please, Josh. Generally, if you can, south-facing is the best. And that's Albuquerque, just so you know. I'm sure you figured it out already. You want to give your plants as much sunlight as possible. So plants that are for food need a lot of sunlight, generally up to 16 hours a day. What also causes some problems, because that's a lot of sun in New Mexico. That's a lot of heat for us. So we'll go into that a little bit later. The best sun is the morning sun. So when the sun comes up and the day is not hot, the plants can get the maximum amount of photosynthesis in without any of the heat. And then you want to guard against the western sun, because now they've had all their sun. They're trying to finish their photosynthesis, and they're getting too much sun, which causes them to start to wilt and go away. They don't have the ability to just take that all day. Some plants love it. Peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, they love that heat, and they'll be fine for the most part, but you still got to take care of them. So you got to think about that. Where do you have that? Think about your backyard, your front yard, any side yards that you have right now. Which one gets more sun? Have you noticed that? Do you have most of your yard on the north side? It's going to be pretty shaded. Do you have some sunny areas in there that you can use? But also remember, the sun does move as it goes throughout the year. It comes up higher in the sky. So you can use some of those areas. You can be very smart and plan out what type of veggies you're going to put in there. There are a lot of arguments on which ways to orient your beds. Should they be north or south? Should they be east and west? Oh, I'm going to be dogmatic on one or the other. I've heard as long as you have mostly level surfaces, it doesn't really matter. You just have to remember that certain plants go to certain heights, and that can shade other plants. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. So basil loves growing underneath tomatoes, and that shade is a great thing. During the summer, lettuces struggle. If they get a ton of shade, that's a good thing. If you have tomatoes shading out your peppers, that's not a good thing. They will cry and complain and probably not grow for you, and you won't get any green chili. Then you'll be upset with me because you're like, you taught us how to do that. No, I didn't. So you got to think about that. Where am I going to put this garden? How can I maximize my space? Where am I going to get the most sun? Keep that in mind, okay? Next, please, Josh. So now we're going to go into materials. This is really simple. Some of these things are optional, some are not. This picture back here is Home Acres. This is the place of a gentleman who I have a book of down here. His name is Charles Dowding. I've learned a ton from him. He does this system called No Dig, which I'm basically teaching you today. He's got a couple books. He's so happy all the time. He's got his fingers in the dirt. Now here's something else. If you're a gardener and you have good soil, you put your hands in the dirt, there's bacteria in that dirt that are good, and they actually produce a dopamine. So you can be happy. And it's not bad for you. It's not a drug. It's how God intended it to be. So if you work your soil, just like he said, you have good soil, you can be a happy person. And so Charles Dowding is a happy person, and look at what he's producing. His garden year after year is amazing. He's in London, just so you know. So he's got a little bit different climate and temperature and amount of water than we do. So we have to adapt what we're doing based on what he's doing because we live in a desert. So you got cardboard, you have compost, you have mulch, shovel, wheelbarrow, and wooden boards if you want. It's not terribly difficult. There's not a ton of work. The most of the work is right up front. So if you want to go to the next one, Josh. So, did we bring that in? Bummer. So I had some cardboard for you. I wanted to show you. It's pretty simple. Everyone knows what cardboard is. What you want is this type. You don't want anything with slick backing that's not going to break down. It's going to leave a plastic layer, and roots won't be able to penetrate, and water won't either. You'll basically create a bowl, and you'll waterlog your plants. That's not good. So this is if you're thinking of an area and you're going, man, there are so many weeds in that area. There's no way I can get a garden. I'm going to be out there every day, constantly just battling, or I'm going to break my back trying to pull that giant 6-foot weed out, right? So instead of trying to break your back, chop them all down, put cardboard on there, make sure that it excludes light. This is basically what you're trying to do. You're not trying to make it so that it can't breathe. You just want to exclude the light. So you layer it in such a way that you have a certain amount covering any of those areas that could let that in. And you just cover it everywhere that you're going to garden. And if you do that, cardboard, and also the least amount of printing on it as possible, okay? Remove all your tape and labels. You don't want that in the ground either. Next one, please, Josh. Thank you. So then you're going to do your compost. So what is compost? Compost is decomposing organic matter. It's not soil, specifically, and it's not topsoil. It's mainly green manures. I have my notes here, but this is so pretty. No, I'm kidding. It's mainly green manures. It could be animal manures. Some people will go so far as human manures, but I'm not going there. Oops, I did. I don't know what I ate before. Wait, I do. When you use compost, as this is breaking down, this is where I'm going to get a little nerdy, a little scientific on you guys, okay? So compost is one of the best things you can possibly do for your garden. And if you can put the most varied amount of greens, so grass clippings, food wastes, no dairy or meat or anything like that, your brown materials, cardboard, wood chips, sticks, branches, things like that, that helps it. But the real workers of the soil are not the plants. The plants aid them, but it's the bacteria, the fungus, the microarthropods, protozoa, nematodes. That was the one I missed. These are God's special agents and workers for us. They go down, they break down the soil. They are able to break down rocks and get the minerals that plants are going to need, because plants, they're called exudates. Basically, they're just sugar cookies in different flavors. So plants put out sugars into the ground, and each type of bacteria and fungus know what that means if they put these things in there. So let me put it this way. The plants put out brownies, chocolate chips, peanut butter cookies, oatmeal raisins, but those are fake. What's that? Oh yeah, which plants? just as a generalization. And these sugars go out, and the bacteria run up and go, oh, that's so great. I love those. And they eat them. They go and get the other nutrients that that cookie signifies, and they bring it back to the plants. So all of these bacteria, fungus, they're the ones feeding your plants. We don't feed the plants. We feed the soil. If we take care of the soil, like we read earlier, we take care of our plants and we take care of ourselves. Okay? I won't go too far into that, but I'm still learning about that. And one of these days, maybe I'll be able to go over some more. But that's what we're trying to do. So when we get compost, we're creating food for the bacteria, nematodes, arthropods, so on and so forth. Next one, please, Josh. And then once it breaks down over time, then you get compost. Then you add that on top of your soil, and it becomes soil altogether. So I did not put nematodes on there. How dare me. Just a note, I did put resources for compost in the back again. There's 3 of them in there. One of them I use, but I have to throw others in there, and I'm not going to tell you which one I use, just so I'm not promoting anyone over anyone else. But if your compost, when you go get it, is still steaming, it's not done, don't plant your plants into them right away. This system, if you have good compost and it's ready to go, you can plant in immediately. If the compost is steaming, spread it out and give it some time. You'll kill your plants if you don't wait. There you go. So, yes, it's a good idea to buy your compost several months before you need it. Right now, obviously, you've got to go get what you can get because it's time to plant. But just be careful and be forewarned about that, okay? You can cool it off, but you need to give it at least a week before you plant into it if it's already coming out hot off the truck. So compost can also act as a mulch. A mulch is a covering. Here's another thing I learned from Paul Gauci and Back to Eden. Everything works better when it has a covering. So if you think about it, we have our skin, it's a covering. We wear clothes, that's a covering. Both are required. Birds have feathers, so on and so forth. You get it. It has a covering. Everything has a covering. Christ is our covering. It works better when we have a covering. His blood covers us. So the earth, if we till it, if we strip all the trees and pull everything off and we just leave it, it doesn't have a cover. We just created a scar or a scab. Think of it that way, okay? I didn't used to hug trees, I do now. No, I'm kidding. This is the general way that I've learned it. If you take care of the earth, you give it a covering, it'll take care of you. So compost is one of those coverings. And we went over that part. So next one, please, Josh. So mulch. So in our area, we need mulch. We need something to help cover the compost to combat evaporation, because that's one of our biggest enemies out here. So what mulch does, and this is straw, it's a really good mulch for your summer because it's light and airy, it's light in color so it reflects the sun, and it also acts, well, if you have an evaporative cooler and you have water running through it, you get a cooling sensation. If that's wet, it keeps your plants cool. And it also helps keep the water from being evaporated underneath. So you can use different things. You can use grass clippings. I have them listed there for you. Grass clippings, straw, wood chips, rocks. You can do it. I've seen rock gardens in Japan, and they grow amazing things out of there. Probably not something we should do here because our climates are a little more hot, okay? But technically, it's a mulch. And of course, compost. And that's also necessary for your paths. So when you're planning out your rows, you need to have some paths where you can walk because you don't want to trample your food. And we'll get into that. But wood chips, especially if they're composted for a year at least, are some of the best things you can put in there because they promote fungus. And I'm not talking about bad fungus, they promote good fungus. And that creates a soil network. Here's another thing about God. So when you look at the mycorrhizal fungi, it's a network that grows underneath the ground, and it can go for miles. 10 miles at least is what I've heard. And as it's growing, you can have a plant over here that says, hey, I need some boron. And the fungus network goes, sweet, 10 miles away, delivers it. It's like FedEx or UPS for your garden. Hey, I need this. Sends it this way. I need some magnesium. Sends it over. Isn't that God awesome? He's like, FedEx, UPS, you don't have nothing on me. This is the way it goes. When I need it, it's there. Guaranteed. But if you till your soils, you break up those fungal networks. So this is why a lot of people are promoting the no-till, no-dig systems now, because you don't want to break that up. Next one, please, Josh. So here's the setup. You lay down your cardboard. We just talked about that. You lay down your cardboard. So this is quite the farm going on here. The picture has quite a few more rows. But you want to cover that. If you have a lot of weeds, do double layer. You think that they're just going to keep coming back, double layer it. If you don't have any weeds, you don't need the cardboard. You can put compost, which we're about to talk about next, right on top, and you can go. And remember, the goal is to not allow light in. That's what you're trying to do. Next one, please, Josh. So then you're going to put 4 to 6 inches of compost on. You don't want to go below 4. You don't want to go too far above 6. You got to count 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't skip anything. It's for you. Sorry, bad humor. Inside joke. Once you spread it out, and if you desire to have borders, this is where your wood comes in. You can use any type of wood, pallet wood, 2x4s, 2x6s, something if you want to keep it nice, tidy, and organized. That's all that's for. Otherwise, you don't need that. You can just put it right on there. Then most people go, excuse me, you can walk on your compost? You can walk on your garden? Yes, if you do a no-dig garden, you can walk on it. It's not a problem for you to go step on it. Compost is light and airy. If you compress it, it will bounce back, especially once it's been worked and you have plants in there for a while. Just don't step on your plants. So you water it down and then you walk on it, and that'll give it a good firmness. There's a difference between compacted and firm. What you're looking for is firm. Compacted has no air. Air can't get in, water can't get in. It's like most of our walkways and desert areas on the trails. So next one, please, Josh. So then once you have your 4 to 6 inches on your row, and rows can be a foot, they can be 30 inches, 2.5 feet, they can be 4 feet, they can be 5 feet. It's all about, just depends on what size. You don't even have to have pathways like this one. You could just do the whole thing. If you have a small garden, just make sure you walk between your plants so that you're not stepping on them, and that's not going to hurt them at all. But if you do have pathways, mulch them. Your plants, think about it, the roots go down and they go out, they spread out. So if you have stuff in your pathways that can feed your plants and break down over time, that's a plus. So don't neglect your pathways. The other thing is, when you put down these mulches, such as wood chips, they exclude light. It reduces your weed pressure for yourself and your plants, because we have to do the weeding, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I've already talked about the rest of it. So I like wood chips. wood chips do amazing things. They hold lots of water. They can accept lots of water from rain. So if you're going to get a flood, they can suck it in and then release it slowly into the ground for you. They're flood mitigators, so they're great. Next one, please, Josh. And here's the best part, maintenance. Everyone's like, no, that's not the best part. I don't want to do maintenance. This simple system that I'm teaching you is very, very, very low on maintenance. Once a year in the fall, generally from late October to early December, buy enough compost where you can put 1 inch of new compost on top of your beds where you're going to be growing. That's all you need to grow a full year. And that's even with intensive gardening. I was going to say grazing, but gardening, thinking cows and such. But you can get 2, 3, or even 4 crops off of just that new inch. Doesn't take more than that. And there's no need to till. And I'll make one final note on fertilizers. So I have that in your handout. But guys, you do not need fertilizers in this system. Your compost takes care of everything. That is the food for the soil microorganisms, and they feed your plants. They go and find the food, and they get it in there. So you don't need them. Plus, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, they all kill all that good soil bacteria and fungi and stuff. So I recommend you don't. If you choose to, that's up to you. But remember, what you put in your ground and is eventually what's going to go into your food, and then it's going to go into you and anyone else who eats it. So choose wisely. Part of the reason I got into gardening is because my stomach broke, and I wanted to learn about food and how I could heal myself. And I learned that the way we grow food as a country is not great. There's a lot of evil things that go into it, and most of the food that comes out of our systems isn't food. It's not good for you. So please choose carefully. I wanted to show you our garden. Next one. So this is what I did in my backyard. I just took this today. You can't really see it, but we have onions and garlic in this bed. We have some in the shade near that white thing, near the chicken coop. We've got some kale and collards and chard. And underneath the boards over here, we've got carrots and peas and beans, and we'll go in there. And I've got other slides showing you what we're going to be doing. So I'm just showing you that I'm already doing what I'm telling you guys. So next one, please. So now let's go into garden planning. So you've got the setup. Now we need to plan it out. Next one. So did I mess that up? So you need to know your plants, and that comes with sowing. And did I not mess that up? So you need to learn what seasons the plants thrive in. I might have mixed up where the pictures go. So you're going to be reading about seeds, seed packages. You're going to be going over resources on the internet, books. You want to go through everything you can to learn about these things. You can ask seasoned gardeners that are going to know how and when and where to put your plants. And you're going to want to try to plan these out. Thank you. But did I get ahead of myself then? No? Okay, thank you. So I'm sure everyone wants green chili or red chili or something like that. That's a summer plant. That doesn't go in yet, so don't worry about that. You still have plenty of time to get your chilies, tomatoes, peppers, squash, zucchini, and cucumbers in the next coming months. So you can go get your bed set up, and you can do that. But to everything, there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven in Ecclesiastes. So Every plant has its own season and a time. So begin learning. If you want to plant lots of lettuce and greens, I would suggest that. That's amazingly good for our diets. It's good for our stomach, guts, and biomes and bacteria that's in there. That can all be planted now. You can get that out immediately. In fact, before you leave, if you want, we have a sprout for every one of you. We have some mesclun mixed lettuce that we will cut a tray out for you. We've been keeping those alive so we can give those to you. Because we figure if we give you something alive, you've got to take care of it. And now you're going to put it to use. So, yes, begin to know your plants. And that'll start helping you out. Learn about them, okay? Next one, Josh. So then you want to sketch out your garden. So you've laid it out. I've shown you how to set it up. You've got to be the judge on how much you're going to put in there, though. How much space you're going to use, where you're going to put rows, if you're going to have rows, those types of things, okay? You're going to use Keyhole, whatever type of garden you're going to do. Sketch it out. Doesn't need to be professional. I'm a nerd. I play on the computer. I printed mine out. But then I scribbled everywhere on it. I think I have it upside down. Yeah, I scribbled everywhere. That is not mine. I just found a nice one. It looks like some very artsy person did. I'm not that artsy. So, but yeah, you saw my beds. There's one row, one row, one row. There's all three. And I just put in what I wanted. And I gave some spacings. Spacings are on the back of your seeds most of the time. Unless you get them without that, then you probably need to do some research to find out where it is. Write it out. Then draw it out. Divide it up so that you know where things are going to go. As you start learning about your plants, you learn about the plant families, how much water they need. Try to put those plant families together. If they're a plant that needs a lot of water, like lettuce, celery, they need tons of water because their bodies are made up of almost all water. Tomatoes, cucumbers, things like that need a lot of water. Put them together, put them nearby so that you can water them in the same amounts. Put some sowing dates down. Start journaling. Start adding things in so you know, hey, I started everything in January's first week. That didn't work. I started everything January's first week indoors. Much better success. You can do that. You can do things like that. Add transplanting dates. Add harvest dates. Seed packets tell you when they should be fully mature. If you know when they're fully mature, you can have other plants ready, maybe that you sowed indoors, to go outside. When that one's done, chop it off right at the ground level, plant the next one in right next to it. And you have roots in the ground all year long. So you're feeding that soil bacteria and network. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Involve the Lord on this. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Go ahead, Josh, the next one. Be observant. Be ready to adapt. Not everything you do is going to work right away. Trust me. I've been experimenting these last 4 years, trying to see all these different things. How close can I put everything together? Well, you can put it as close as you want, but you're not going to get the same amount of produce or food. It's not going to happen. You need to give correct spacing. Keep notes. Do a journal. I just started that. I didn't bring it. I forgot. Sorry. There's not much in it. I just started it this year. Not really a journaler, but I'm going to become one. Things will not always work out perfectly. Try to have plants growing all the time to replace them. If you know you need 12 plants to fit in this area, don't grow just 12 plants. Grow 24. That way you have something to put in there. If 12 or 6 plants died, I have got 12 more that I can pick from. Which one's the strongest looking? Oh, that one. Put it in. I'm practicing that. Look. I only needed 44 lettuce. The 44 I have are at home. but I still have another 100, looks like, in here. And that was just little pinches of the lettuce. And I went, oops, too many. So we decided to share with you guys. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. So many people get caught up in, but it's got to be right the first time. It won't be right always the first time. It's okay. If you have more plants growing, the first mistakes aren't a big deal. You can make up for it. Here's another thing I learned from Paul Gauci. Just because he's a Christian, he's always out in his garden praying, hey, God, what about this? Hey, God, what about that? Hey, God, what about these pests? God goes, pests? I don't have pests. That's my police force. They go take out dead, dying, and weak plants, or at least bring them down to the point where they can rebuild themselves into something good. Pests are an indication of how your plant's doing. Weeds are also, or an indication of how your soil's doing, Weeds are also an indication of how your soil's doing. So, but that gets too scientific, so I'm not going to go into that tonight. If you have questions on that, I would be glad to answer those, but I'm still learning on that one as well. This also comes from the Lord of hosts, who is wonderful in counsel and excellent in guidance. He created it, guys. Ask him. He loves it when you talk to him. Next one, please, Josh. All right. We still got some time. Okay, the planting process. Next one. So now we're going to go into sowing. So there's two different types. You can direct seed. Guess what that is? Put it right in the ground. You can do it module sowing. That's what I was doing here. This is a little bit more broad. This is where you just place your seeds out, set them, and they grow up. This is a way that you can get a lot of food in a very small area, and then you choose which ones you want. Oh, that one looks really strong. And then it's called pricking out. And you put in popsicle stick, pencil, pen, something like that. You grab onto one of the leaves. Don't grab the stems. If you smash the stem, that thing's done, okay? And you just pull the leaves gently, and you get under here, and you lever them out. And you try to get that root, and then you pop it into a hole. So then you get these into their individual trays, and then they can grow on. And this is good so that you can monitor what's going on. You choose which ones get to go in there, because if you direct seed, they don't always come up. So I showed you our garden bed. I changed the rows. It used to be north to south. Now they're east to west. Well, guess what? Those onions that didn't grow up last year, they're coming up east to west, right through my garden, everywhere I don't want them, right in my footpaths. Luckily, onions are very resilient. I can go down there, pick them up, or dig them out rather, and plant them where I want them. So, hey, it didn't work out. It was a mistake, but I was observant. I saw them popping out, and I can make something good out of that. So I have onions that are ahead, even though I have some onions in the house that are behind. We're still going to get something. So certain plants do better with that. Carrots, your root veggies, generally, you have to direct seed them. You have to put them right outside. One of the tips you can use for that, do you remember seeing on the picture before with our garden? I had boards laying out on our garden. I did that because it helps stop evaporation. Underneath those boards, it's wet. And so that helps germinate the seeds better. And then carrots take like 10 days, so those will be on there for a while, and then once it's good and they start sprouting up, I'll just toss them out of the way. I don't need them anymore. And they'll start growing up. So that's something else to know about your seeds. Which ones can be direct sown, which ones can be module sown. I'm going to direct seed everything. Sweet, good. Make sure you keep them covered so that they have a lot of soil moisture. You want to make sure that the potting soil, the potting compost is airy. That you have enough room that it doesn't really compact. Sand's probably not going to work too great for seeds. It can. It works for propagation, but that's a whole nother story. So you want to make sure it's light and airy. Some of these places will use what's called vermiculite. And there's another name for it. Perlite. Thank you. That it's basically just rocks that you can put in that help keep the soil from compacting, and it helps it stay airy. Do not overwater your plants. This is something I've made a mistake on every single year until this year. I've finally learned that I have been overwatering my plants. So if you're doing something like this, you get that soil nice and wet first. Feel that. Get that into your mindset. How heavy is that when it's fully wet? And then you can judge how much water you need. You don't have to stick your finger in there. You can. That's a good indication. It's like doing this. Is it raining? Yes, it's wet. Then you can check that. But if you do it by weight, then you know how much water is in there. Plants, when they're first starting out, they need to have moisture all around, but they don't need to be soaking wet. That's going to cause them to break down, and fungus will just take over. So please be careful. Do not overwater. Certain resources are great. If you can find this one online, Charles Dowding's Skills for Growing, you can peek at it if you want. Ton of good watering tips in there. I used to water like every day, multiple times a day. It's fun. Yeah, well, yeah, I like it too. But I didn't realize that I had made a mistake. I dug into the ground, pulled out all the dirt, then put compost in. But what I found at the bottom was clay. I was watering tons. I made a clay pot, and so everything was just sitting in water. I'll never do that again. That was too much work when you can just lay it on top and grow right in there. It's so much easier. Take advantage of the space and warmth of your house. So when it's cold outside January 1st, but you want to start your veggies because you want to get the biggest plants you can out there, great. Bring them inside. Use the warmth that's in there to help germinate all your seeds. And of course, if you have some extra space, you can put them in warm places. They don't need sun when they're germinating, but you can keep them in a warm spot. So maybe you run that laundry unit all the time and it's warm in there. That's a great spot. It's normally dark, no one's in there. They don't care about the sound, they just need the warmth. There are a lot of plants that you can sow together. So the lettuces, plants grow well when they're right next to each other to start, but then you can space them out. Onions, beets, carrots, all sorts of things. But you can get a lot of produce out of a certain area if you just multi-sow onions. So Charles Dowding likes to do about 5 to 7 if he's going to be using them for onions that are going to bulb. If he's going to do onions that are for spring onions and he's just using the greens, he'll do 8 to 10. Because then you can just pull a few here and there as you go, and then you leave some in there to become bulbs if you want. And if you're just doing greens, just keep cutting them. Or you can pull them out and have your chives. Either way, there's a lot of different options in here. I can't tell you dogmatically which way is the best because I'm still learning, and there's probably so many best ways. But I'm just giving you some ideas. Next one, please, Josh. Oh, there you go. There's our house. We didn't use our garden tub this time. I used my office, so it's my garden office. That's all the stuff that we had planted this year, including what I brought here with you guys, or for you guys. Next, please. And transplanting. So if you decide to plant them in the module tray first, this is where spacing is key, but of course, if you're direct sowing them, spacing is still key. You just do it earlier. If you have some transplants, they're going to be growing, they're small. You have 4 to 6 inches. Make a hole. You don't have to dig it out, you can just push it down and plant your little transplants in there a decent way so that you have maybe just a little bit of leaf above the ground. Does that make sense? See some heads? Okay, not too complex. Okay, good. That helps protect it from the wind that's coming over. It helps put them further down so their roots immediately get water because the top portions of your compost or your area are going to dry out. That's okay. That's what they're meant to do. But that keeps all the water down here below from evaporating, and it's cool. And spacing is going to change depending on the plants. If you want lettuces, you can put them really tight together. You're going to get a whole bunch of small leaves, and you can chop them down and they'll grow back again, but you're not going to get much more than that. If you want bigger leaves, you got to give them more spacing. Make sense? Farther spacing can generally give you larger crops. Not always 100%, but they can give you larger crops that way. And I probably missed one of those, but I have them written down. It shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in its season. Whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. So we're planting them low so they can get that moisture, and then we want to protect them from the sun. Next, please. So I'm not trying to advertise, but what I want to show you is that if you go to somewhere like Sprouts, Whole Foods, whatever, and you buy Pete's Organic or something similar to it, you can actually get lettuce that still has the roots on there, which is pretty neat. And then if you use a technique I learned from Charles Dowding, you grab the leaves from the outside and you use those for your salad, whatever you're going to do, your sandwich, whatever, and leave the inner leaves, the little ones popping up. You can plant those again and they'll grow. And so if you go to the next one, Kelly was out there helping me. We planted our food. We planted our salad that we ate. So that's one way you can get a mature plant. It's already ready to go. Just give it some time indoors because remember they've been inside, they've been in a refrigerator, and they've been cold the whole time. So now you've got to warm them up and gently give them some more sun. That's another thing. If you're doing transplants, there's this technique called hardening off. And what you do is you take your plants outside, put them in the sun for an hour, and bring them back in. Next day, 2 hours, bring them back in. Next day, so on and so forth, until you can get them out for a whole day, and then plant them. If you have a greenhouse already, it's already outside, go plant them. They're ready to go. Next one, please, Josh. And so there's a bigger picture of it. Go ahead, next one. So weeding, oh man. Why do you got to talk about sin? In this system, remember I said maintenance is really, 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 really simple. Weeding in a no-dig system is not a pain at all. You're generally going to get really small produce, and if you stay on top of it, you'll see at the bottom this says little and often. Get them when they're little, check for it often. And if you do that, it's just blink. None of this, oh, it's not going to come. And then you just have to chop it out. It's not going to work. It'll grow back. These, you pull it, they're not going to grow back. You can give it to your chickens or throw it in your compost if you choose to make it. Weeds can also tell you something about your soil. So if you see them growing around your garden area, if they have really matted roots, they're trying to hold your soil together. If they have really long roots like dandelions, you have a lot of compaction in your soil. You need to add more compost and keep it covered. Something like that. And of course, we read about that earlier. And some fell among the thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them because they will compete for nutrients, sunlight, air, and moisture. So next, watering. I'm the beginner that overwatered. Most beginners overwater, okay? They don't need it every day. You actually want their roots to go down into the ground. If the water is always at the top, they won't send down their roots as far. And you're going to have dead plants when that heat comes out. They're going to spring up like they did in the stony places. The sun comes out, bakes them, and they're done. And guess what? We have a baking oven of a sun in New Mexico. Plants handle less water better than they handle more water. Smaller plants, not so much. So you have to be careful and attend to those and be very observant with those. I've lost a whole bunch of those seedlings that I've pricked out. I didn't do it quite right, and they got dried out and they died. I mean, they're black trays inside of black trays with black compost, and I had them on my concrete. And one day I came home, and probably about 20 out of the 24 were dead. I baked them. But that's okay. I had extras because I planted way too many. Hand watering is the best. Each plant's going to be different. Each type of plant is going to need more or less. That's not possible. If you remember my garden, there was a whole bunch of brown lines on that. That's an automatic drip system. I can't be out there to observe that. But if you do have an automatic sprinkler system or drip system, that is not an excuse to not be observant. So make sure you go out into your garden and you check on it. You look at it, you spend time on it, put your hands in the soil, get that dopamine. It's good. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then neither he who plants is anything, nor he who waters, but God who gives the increase. Now he who plants and he who waters are one, and each one will receive his own reward according to his own labor. There's another one. Agriculture is in there. Obviously that one's Paul, but you know it's through the Spirit, so Jesus inspired. Next one, please. Here's the fun part. After all that hard work of setting up, planning, sowing, tending to it, waiting, and then you get to come to harvesting. So harvests come at various times. Seed packages are your best friend. So are seasoned gardeners. One thing that's pretty cool about root vegetables is you can eat them at any time. Onions, garlic, potatoes, radish, turnips, beets, they can all be harvested at any time. So that's why frequently you can put them together in clumps and you pull out small ones here and there and leave some to grow bigger. Some vegetables have a very small window. It's like broccoli. If you want a broccoli head, if you wait too long, that'll flower and then it won't be as pretty. You can eat those flowers though. So actually, you can eat the whole broccoli plant. It all tastes the same. You can throw that in your salad. Learned that from a buddy gardener who used to come to this church. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways, be wise, which having no captain, overseer or ruler provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. And then there's also one about the sluggard who puts his hand in the bowl and doesn't even bring it back to his mouth. Let's not be that person. Let's be observant. Let's be in there. I mean, you work that hard. Why not get the produce? And if you do well, you'll have enough to share. And then you can go evangelize and witness. Next, Josh. No, I use some icons and photos, so I have to give credit. Next, please. Kelly took some photos for me. I took one. Okay, next. That's it. Oh. Thank you for hanging in there for me. I tried to make it fun and have a lot of pictures. Any questions? Oh boy. Okay, so ladies first. There are better containers than others. Generally, you're going to find most of them are plastic. That is okay. Sometimes we talked about it before. Plastics do leach into the waters, so you have to think about that. Everything that leaches into where your plants are growing is eventually going to make it into the plants. Galvanized steel, I believe, can work pretty well. Sometimes metals react with bacteria, and you may struggle a little bit. Wood's really good. It's going to break down over time. Yeah, that is possible, yes. So think about that wisely. That's why I recommend in-ground if you can. That's how God created it. It's the best way to do it. If you can't, your back just doesn't let you, maybe you could use wood pots or wood construction. I know that is where the budget may get blown, because wood is very expensive right now. So, Steve. Hmm. Yes. So that is a great point. One of the neat things I've learned about doing this system is you can grow on top of any soil. So what you're trying to do is not keep the plants from getting to the soil, but you want to aid them as they're working down to the soil. The best soils, they say, are a mixture of the sand, clay, silt, and that makes a loam. And that's what you're looking for is one of the best soils. Compost helps build that loam. So you need the compost to cover it, you need the water, the air, you need the bacteria and the microorganisms and the plants, and they all three work together to create that best soil, to create that loam. So you can get a loam out of clay, you can get it out of sand. I've seen this system work on full sand. They just put compost on top of it, and then they cut through it later on and took a slice, and the roots just kept going. It didn't bother them at all, and that's where all your minerals are going to come from. Sand has a ton of minerals in it. Clay has a ton of minerals in it. Your loam just makes it nice and soft. And I think I covered everything. So, sure. Hmm. Yeah. Um, some people would say if you have a lot of compaction because of that, and I understand that we have some land that down south that looks like pottery when it dries out. Um, you can do some initial tillage and try to loosen it up. I, I've also seen where that's not necessary. So that one's honestly up to you. Your decision. If you like to do less work, then the compost will take care of it, and the plant roots will begin to work through it. So another example is carrots. Carrots grow right down. If you have compacted clay, but you start with compost on top, they will burrow into that. Daikon radish, they actually sell that specifically to farmers who have compaction issues, and because they just grow massive roots that dig down and send spikes into the earth to aerate is basically what they do. So let the compost and the plants and the water and air take care of that for you is what I would recommend. So, Adan? Yes, I didn't get into pollinators. You are absolutely correct. So pollinating plants are awesome. As much diversity as you can put into your garden as possible is great. So if you have something that will attract your pests, but also pollinate, you can get extra produce out of your food without having to go out there and do it yourself. So you can go pollinate bell peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes, and a whole bunch of other things on your own using a little Q-tip. But if you have pollinators, like Adam was bringing up, and you have things for them to feed on, they can do that work for you. So that's a really good point. Thank you. Sure. Yes, you can use it for compost. Leaves are great for mulch too, if you want to use that. Use what's around you. You don't have to go buy cardboard. If there's places that are getting rid of a whole bunch of cardboard, maybe a Smith's, an Albertsons, big box store, Walmart, something like that, If you can get access to that stuff for free, go for it if you need those types of things. If you can make your own compost, that's kind of hard, but you can do it. It's easy. For some people, it's very easy. I would recommend that. If not, I put 3 resources in the back of where you can find it here in Albuquerque. Places that I think will do well. And then you had one. Oh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You don't need to. What happens is if you just cut it at ground level, those will decompose and become food for your plants later on. So it'll feed the bacteria and that'll help feed the plants. So you don't have to. If you plant something shortly after, those roots will actually use those pathways that the other roots already made, and that'll get them around into the system and established a lot faster. So I'll leave it up to you, but uh, the system is really simple. You don't have to do that. One of the men is mentoring me from online, basically. Every time he pulls something out of his garden, he just twists it out or chops it at ground level and just plants the next thing right there, and it becomes food. It decomposes in the ground. So he just does it very simply. But either way, one more. Nice. Mm-hmm. You definitely can use those right away. If you're going to use them, especially in your pathways, that's perfect. If you want to use those in your compost, that's also great. If you want to use wood as your mulch, only on top. Absolutely not do you till them in. That will mess up your soil system. You want to keep those on top. And then if you're going to do your yearly maintenance, normally you want to leave everything where it is, but if you want to put your compost down, just pull your wood chips off, put your compost down, and put them back on. Jim? Yeah. 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 It will break down over time. So, okay. Oops. I don't know my own phone number. They might. That'd be funny. The last digit is not a 9, it's an 8. Sorry. If you want to correct that. Teresa. Mm-hmm. Some people will say that you shouldn't put citrus in there. That makes it a little harder. Definitely not any dairy or meat. That doesn't need to go in your compost. Um, Technically, some people don't consider fish meat, but you can actually use fish. That's a great primer because it breaks down so fast. The carbon and nitrogen ratio is really good. Mm, yeah, generally you can put quite a few things in there, so pretty safe. Okay, go ahead. That's a good question. I know I didn't put that in there on purpose because there are so many companies that are actually reputable that I didn't want to try to just recommend one. I just go to the nurseries and buy heirloom seeds. I try to buy heirloom seeds. And this very lovely couple up here let me know that if you have a library card, you can actually join part of their seed bank and gain seeds from the library. So I just learned that today, which is pretty neat. So you said certain locations have it a little easier than others? South South Broadway Cultural Center Library. Yeah, they have, I didn't know that. So another benefit of having a library card. You can get some seeds from their seed bank. Oh, please. Mhm. So there's quite a few options, and this is a really good book. I haven't read through it yet, but I know there's a ton of people that have and been using it. Four Seasons Gardening. It's in the back on your resources already by Elliot Coleman. And one thing that we've tried is we made our own little hoops in the backyard, and we put just 6 mil plastic, like painter's plastic. It's not food grade, it's plastic, but I'm trying to produce something in the backyard during a season that doesn't. So we made, and I just put rocks or whatever was heavy around the outside. And you know what? I kept it so warm in there. I had to vent it during the coldest, even the coldest days of the year. And it was like a sauna. And those things were just, I didn't make it big enough, honestly. They outgrew my whole structure because it was only about this far off the ground. I should have doubled it because the plants were like, oh, we don't have enough room. So you can grow them inside. There are people that use specific lights. You can keep them inside. There are some problems with doing that because if you keep your plants inside too long and it stays too wet, you're going to get mold and that'll take them down. So eventually you have to get them outside so they can get some sun and that'll combat the mold. So that's one of the ways. There's a lot of different ways that you can grow food during the winter. So yes, ma'am. Bindweed persistently. Um, you keep digging it out. But if you have it and you want to plant over it, I would recommend the double cardboard and then keep going after it. But you generally have to dig pretty far to get to the main roots, and they'll keep going. And this is something I've learned a lot from Charles Dowding because he has a ton of bindweed in his area. But what'll happen is if you keep picking it consistently while it's tiny and popping out, it will eventually die because you're keeping it from getting to the light. So there's only plants store sugars in their roots, but if they can't get to the light and do photosynthesis to make new sugars, eventually they'll run out and die. So that one you have to be persistent. So God's teaching you some patience and persistence on that one, but that's okay. You'll get there. You're gonna win. So keep after it. Just rabbits and squirrels. Oh man. Um, What's that? Yeah. A BB gun, repellent gun. You can do live traps is one way. If you want to protect your garden, there's meshes you can buy. So you get hoops and you place the meshes over it so they can't get in. Um, Sometimes they can chew through those, so maybe metal meshes to keep them out. What else? They can climb, so a raised bed's not going to really protect you very much. Hoop houses. So during the winter, if you want to grow food, hoop houses with plastics and coverings, they're good, but plants need sunlight, actual sunlight to live. And so I'm going to answer a couple questions at the same time. If you want the best nutritious food you can get, they need sunlight. They've done research that plants that are grown in greenhouses entirely have 80 to 90% reduction in phytonutrients available in them. So these tomatoes that used to have 396 phytonutrients went down to like 20. So, but here's the caveat. Your food that you're growing in your backyard is going to be far more nutritious than anything that they're growing and shipping to you, because by the time it gets to you, it's already lost some of its nutrients anyway. So even though I know sun is the best, if you want to eat, cover the plants, keep them good, and then give them as much sun as you can during the cold days, and then cover it before the sun goes down so that you have enough time to heat up the soil and it keeps it warmer at night. I don't have a lot of experience with rabbits and squirrels because I live in the city and I've only ever seen one squirrel, and he's always left me alone, which is nice. But I have heard a lot of people are very frustrated with them. So maybe invite the hawks and owls nearby by putting up some posts or something higher, and that they can help watch out for those stinkers for you. What's that? Oh, if you have your dogs, let them around your garden, maybe not in your garden, but around them to help patrol. So, you know. Uh, Thank you, Adon. That's a good point. So this is just basics. There's so much we can go into, but seed saving is a big deal nowadays, and that is something that's being talked about a lot when you go into resources on the internet, and we're actually going past time. So let me pray. If you still have questions, I'll be here, and I'll be glad to answer your other question. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm not trying to ignore you, but let's get everyone out because I'm 7 minutes past, 8 minutes almost. So, Father, we thank you for this day. I thank you that you have made such a beautiful creation, that you have made it so that we can work with you in it, but not just with the plants and the birds and the air and the seeds and everything else, Lord, but with your people, the people that you made, Father, and that we can interact with them, we can make relationships. And you've charged us with going out and making disciples of all the nations. Would you help us to do so? And may the harvest that we all have be plentiful so that we can help earn these relationships by loving on people and sacrificing for them. We thank you. I ask that you bless everyone here, keep them safe, give them a good night's rest, get them home without any issues, and help them to get started. Be their guide, be their wisdom, and may you continue to just pour out your great love on them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.